They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned that blood can also be poison. I'm ELENOR May Johnson, born in 1941 in Millbrook, Alabama. Back in 1953, when I was just 12 years old, my father Walter Johnson began doing unspeakable things to me in the darkness of our family home. I felt like I was drowning in shame and terror, but then something happened that would change everything. Today, at 83 years old, sitting in my quiet Atlanta home, I'm finally sharing this because silence protects predators, not children. If you're listening, drop your location below, and please hit that subscribe button. This story needs to be heard. My father was what everyone called a pillar of the community. Walter Johnson owned the general store on Main Street, sang in the church choir every Sunday, and had a handshake and smile for every neighbor. People would tip their hats and say, "Morning, Mr. Johnson," with genuine respect. If only they knew what happened when those same hands that counted change and shook hands in fellowship would find their way to places they had no right to touch. It started on a humid August night when Mama had taken one of her long walks to clear her head. She'd been struggling with what we now know was severe depression, spending days in bed with the curtains drawn tight. Daddy called me into his study, claiming he needed help with the store's books. I was always good with numbers, proud that he trusted me with grown-up responsibilities. But when I walked into that dimly lit room, the ledger wasn't what he wanted to show me. "Ellie, darling," he said in that voice that made my skin crawl, "you're becoming such a beautiful young lady." His eyes had this hungry look that made me want to run, but where could a 12-year-old girl go in 1953? He told me this was our special secret, that good daughters help their daddies in special ways. The shame burned through me like acid as he explained that if I ever told anyone, terrible things would happen to our family. He'd lose the store, we'd lose our home, and it would all be my fault. The abuse became as regular as Sunday service. Every few nights, when Mama was lost in her own darkness, Daddy would find reasons to be alone with me. He'd send my younger sisters, Mary and little Sarah, to bed early, then summon me with that same sickening smile. I learned to disappear inside my own mind, to float somewhere above my body while he did those horrible things. I'd count the water stains on the ceiling, recite multiplication tables, anything to escape the reality of what was happening. What made it worse was watching him the next morning, buttering his toast and reading the newspaper like nothing had happened. He'd ruffle my hair and ask about my schoolwork in front of Mama, playing the loving father while I sat there feeling dirty and broken. The hypocrisy was suffocating. This man who taught Sunday school and lectured about morality was destroying his own daughter's innocence night after night. When Mary turned 11, I saw that same predatory look in his eyes when he watched her. My heart shattered into a million pieces, because I knew what was coming. I tried to warn her without saying the words directly, telling her to never be alone with Daddy, to always find excuses to stay with friends or neighbors. But one night, I heard her crying through the thin walls, and I knew he'd gotten to her too. We developed a silent language, Mary and I. A look across the dinner table that said, "I understand." A squeeze of the hand that meant, "You're not alone." We became each other's lifelines in an ocean of horror, two little girls trying to survive in a house where the monster wore our father's face. We made a pact without words. We'd protect little Sarah at all costs. I tried reaching out for help, but who would believe us? Daddy was respected, successful, charming. When I hinted to my teacher, Mrs. Patterson, that things weren't right at home, she told me I was lucky to have such a wonderful father. When I confided in our priest during confession, he said I must be mistaken and should pray for forgiveness for having impure thoughts about my own father. Even my own grandmother, Mama's mother, told me that sometimes women had to endure difficult things for the sake of family stability. The isolation was crushing. I felt like I was screaming into a void, surrounded by adults who either couldn't or wouldn't see the truth. Mama was so lost in her own mental struggles that she barely noticed what was happening right under her nose. Or maybe she did notice and chose to look away, because facing the truth would have shattered what little stability she had left. By the time I turned 15, the abuse had been going on for 3 years. I'd learned to compartmentalize, to function during the day while dying inside at night. I threw myself into my studies, becoming the best student in my class, as if academic achievement could somehow wash away the filth I felt covering my soul. I helped Mr. Tibbs, the elderly bookkeeper who came to help with Daddy's store accounts, and he taught me advanced mathematics and accounting principles. Those skills would prove more valuable than I could have imagined. But everything changed the night I caught Daddy looking at 8-year-old Sarah the same way he'd once looked at Mary and me. She was so innocent, so trusting, still believing that Daddy was her hero. The thought of him touching her, of stealing her childhood the way he'd stolen ours, filled me with a rage so pure and focused that it burned away my fear. That night, as I lay in bed listening to Sarah's peaceful breathing, I made a decision that would change all our lives forever. I wasn't going to let him destroy another little girl. I wasn't going to wait for someone else to save us. If the adults in our world wouldn't protect us, then I'd have to find another way. The plan that began forming in my mind was dangerous, maybe even deadly, but I was past caring about the consequences. Some monsters can only be stopped by becoming something monstrous yourself. The plan came to me like a divine revelation during one of Mr. Tibbs' bookkeeping lessons. He'd been showing me how to track discrepancies in accounts, how numbers could tell stories that people tried to hide. As I watched him work through Daddy's ledgers, I noticed something that made my blood run cold and my heart race with possibility. Walter Johnson, the respected businessman, was skimming money from his own store and falsifying records to hide gambling debts. I'd overheard whispered conversations between Daddy and a man named Johnny Marks, a loan shark from Birmingham who had the kind of reputation that made grown men cross the street. Daddy owed him serious money, the kind that came with broken bones as interest payments. But what Johnny didn't know was that Daddy had been cooking the books, making the store appear more profitable than it actually was to secure bigger loans. Over the next few months, I became the perfect daughter, volunteering to help with the bookkeeping whenever Mr. Tibbs visited. I memorized every false entry, every manipulated number, every lie Daddy had woven into those ledgers. I learned his patterns, his methods, his weaknesses. Knowledge became my weapon, and patience became my strategy. The opportunity came when Daddy announced he was taking a weekend trip to Montgomery for a business conference. I knew it was really to meet with other gamblers to try winning back some of what he owed. That Friday night, after everyone was asleep, I crept into his study and began my work. Using everything Mr. Tibbs had taught me, I carefully altered the books to expose every fraudulent transaction, every stolen dollar, every lie. But I didn't stop there. I created a detailed report, written in my neatest handwriting, documenting 3 years of financial fraud. I included dates, amounts, and methods, making it impossible for anyone to dismiss as childish fantasy. Then I did something that still makes my hands shake when I remember it. I mailed copies to Johnny Marks, along with a note explaining that Walter Johnson had been stealing money that should have gone toward paying his debts. The letter was simple. Mr. Marks, Walter Johnson has been lying to you about his store's profits. He's been stealing money and hiding it from you while claiming he can't pay what he owes. The attached records prove everything. A concerned citizen who believes in honest business dealings. I mailed it on Monday morning before school, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. There was no going back now. I'd set something in motion that would either save us or destroy us all, but I couldn't live with the alternative of watching Daddy hurt Sarah the way he'd hurt Mary and me. The confrontation came on a Thursday evening. I was helping Mama with dinner when we heard shouting from the store below our apartment. Johnny Marks had arrived with 2 men who looked like they could break bones with their bare hands. Through the thin floorboards we could hear Daddy's voice getting higher and more desperate as Johnny's got lower and more dangerous. You've been playing me for a fool, Walter. Johnny's voice carried up through the floor like smoke. Skimming money while crying poor to me. That's not how business works in my world. Daddy tried to deny everything, but Johnny had the evidence I'd provided. Every falsified entry, every hidden transaction, laid out in black and white. The beating that followed was brutal but brief. When the shouting stopped, there was a silence that seemed to stretch forever. Mama found him the next morning when she went down to open the store. The official cause of death was listed as a heart attack brought on by stress, but I knew the truth. Johnny Marks had made sure Daddy would never steal from anyone again, never hurt another child, never spread his poison through our family. I felt no guilt, only relief. The monster was dead, and we were finally free. The life insurance payout was substantial $50,000, more money than we'd ever dreamed of having. Mama, suddenly freed from the oppressive weight of Daddy's presence, began to emerge from her depression like a flower reaching toward sunlight. We sold the store, packed our belongings, and moved to Atlanta, where nobody knew our story or our shame. In Atlanta, I threw myself into building a new life. I finished high school with honors, earned a scholarship to Georgia State University, and became a teacher. But more importantly, I found my true calling when I met other survivors of childhood abuse. I realized that my experience, as horrible as it had been, had given me something precious, the ability to recognize the signs, to offer hope, and to provide the help that no adult had given me. In 1975, I founded the New Dawn Center, a shelter and support facility for abused girls. Using the skills Mr. Tibbs had taught me and the insurance money as seed funding, I created a place where children could find safety, healing, and hope. Over the past 48 years, we've helped more than 1,500 girls escape situations like mine, providing them with counseling, education, and the tools they need to build healthy lives. Mary became a social worker, dedicating her life to child protection services. Sarah, who was spared the worst of Daddy's abuse thanks to our intervention, became a pediatric nurse, caring for children with the gentleness she deserved as a child. We all transformed our trauma into purpose, our pain into power to help others. I won't lie and say I never think about what I did. Taking a life, even indirectly, even in protection of innocent children, carries weight that never fully lifts. But when I see the faces of the girls we've helped, when I receive letters from women who are now mothers themselves, telling me how the center saved their lives, I know that sometimes justice comes in forms that courtrooms and law books can't provide. The cycle of abuse ends when someone has the courage to break it. If you're listening to this and you're suffering in silence, please know that you're not alone. There are people who will believe you, who will help you, who will fight for you. If you're an adult who suspects a child is being abused, don't look away. Don't make excuses. Be the person I needed when I was 12 years old. To everyone watching, please like this video if my story touched you, subscribe to help spread awareness about child abuse, and share this with someone who might need to hear it. Comment below with your thoughts or the lesson that resonated most with you. Together we can ensure that no child suffers in silence the way I did. Remember, healing is possible. Justice sometimes comes in unexpected forms, and from the deepest darkness can grow the brightest light to guide others home. Wind down. Every scar tells a story of survival. Every survivor holds the power to light another's path toward healing, hope, and the beautiful possibility of tomorrow's peace.